What is up, everybody? Happy Sunday. Welcome to Market Kickoff with Nick4ATick. How are we all doing? How was the last week for everybody in the chat? Quick mic sound check. Everything look and sound good? Looks like everything's coming through on my end, but I will wait for the chat to tell me. Andrews gave me a thumbs up, so we are good to go. How are we all doing? I can't imagine this is going to be a very, very normal week. If you don't know, tomorrow is a holiday. Futures are going to be open for a half day, as it is for the new administration coming into the House. We have Trump's inauguration tomorrow, and unless you were doing better things this weekend, I hope most of you were. The Trump administration started off already. If you have not been paying attention to what's been going on in financial markets and Twitter and the crypto markets, Trump launched a meme coin, and it has taken the FinTwit by storm. I can't even explain it, guys. I have nothing to say outside of, the little joke I made on Twitter, which is like, why is it so complicated to buy some of these assets? You have to have certain apps, and it's just, I stay away, as should most of you. If you made money in it, if you've made money in some of these meme coins before, good for you, man. I stay far and clear away from all of these things. And a good reason is it got rugged about 50% in the last 30 minutes, I think. We're not going to waste any time really talking about that, but it's one of those things going into tomorrow with the new administration. You kind of just have to laugh it off and say, here we are, the Trump reign is back, and this is the type of thing we're going to expect. Whether it's going to be in the financial markets, where a tweet at absolutely any time could send us down the elevator or shoot us up. It's one of those things where, as we get more comfortable and as the administration kind of takes form, and as policy changes or rumblings of policy changes kind of start, taking center stage, it may be a time, at least as we kind of wait for the dust to settle on the new administration, to not necessarily size down, but just be vigilant, see profit, take profit. You don't need to capture your entire year in the next couple of weeks. So with that in mind, it's kind of like wrap up your day at reasonable times. Don't overtrade. Use stops and have clear set take profits, unless you're really catching a trend day and you're going to let it continue to run higher or lower. If it's chopping around, if it's range bound, you should be definitely see profit, take profit. Don't get blown out of a trade that was profitable because of a mean tweet here or there. I guess is what I'm saying. So with all that going on, how did everyone do last week? In trading, in futures, and anything you guys were dabbling in the last week? I had a very good week on my Topstep live account. I was on like a 2-day losing streak at the end of last week, kind of just over trading, giving back gains, because remember last Sunday we had talked about, I had 2 days in a row, Thursday and Friday of the previous week, where I could have walked away up, $1,200, $1,500, kept trading, and ended up giving it back and hitting Club DLL on that Friday. So things I tried to avoid this past week, and, had a very, very, very solid week. Ended up being up about 10,500 in the live account across 5 winning days. So that's always a good thing. And I'm going to try something this year. I normally would take that 10K and withdraw it this week, but I just took a 10K payout like 2 weeks ago as it is. So I'm going to continue to try to, stabilize the account balance, let it grow a little bit, try to maybe trade a little more size later in this year if I can continue to kind of balloon that account a little more. But I don't need the cash. So I'm going to let it ride, continue to try to build it a little more, and then maybe take another chunk out in the coming weeks. So my logic is I'm just going to try to continue what I've been doing, which is not looking for absolutely types of like home runs in this environment, looking for the right trade and then just calling it a day, moving forward with my life and doing something better, which is a good philosophy to have, especially if you're green, especially if you're continuing to kind of fight that tilt urge to, be greedy or continue to make more, continue to trade because you're sitting in front of your computer. Even if you're working for somebody else and you do this on the side, make a little cash, having charts on, all across your desk like I do throughout the day, it's a recipe for over trading. So for me, I have to lock out. I have to close down my computer. I have to shut things down, go do something else, come back in the afternoon just to kind of see what's going on. But, at that point, I'm out of trades. So I hope everyone had a safe week. I hope everyone has had a wonderful weekend. It's a little cold here in North Texas. We do have a freeze warning. I got to drip the pipes tonight, which is always fun. We've had some good football so far this weekend. The Eagles and Rams are playing in a little snow day. So with that in mind, let's get into some prep for the week. Where do we go from here? As I said, we basically, had a very bullish week. Who remembers the prep from last Sunday? We had talked about this little level going back to an election night where we hit the lows kind of around the 800s, but we had talked really about the point of control being a good, safe long if we started to build volume above it. But we did exactly that. We kind of, in the early part of the week, we did exactly what my prep was kind of articulating. If you got weakness out of the gate, where might we go? Well, it would be to go test or break or go after that election low. And it made the attempt to break lower. We didn't quite get it. We started to build volume, and then it was pretty much off to the races. Obviously, we had a little weakness going into the PPI number as well. But then from there, it was off to the races all week. And CPI basically confirmed mission accomplished once again for the Fed. And now we are at the top of this, last couple of weeks of range going back to the FOMC lows, where we could be in a very large balance area between 60/50s and the kind of 5900s. 5900 exactly. 58.99s. Wow. So it's very possible we could reoffer up here in the early parts of this week, and we could just kind of balance in the early parts of this week until the new administration takes form and we have new information to digest. But the other logic is we could absolutely kind of come down and retest, some of these points of control going back for the last couple of weeks down here towards the 5950s area, 5940s. I'm even setting my weekly pivot down here between 35 and 30s, which would basically be about 5900 on SPX. It's the same logic where if we got weakness, I don't care until we kind of break all of this volume from the last couple of weeks. All of this kind of value area here, sellers would really have to show me something, since the new narrative now is once again, like it was in November 2023, inflation is defeated and, all bets are off. You have the Fed talking about, maybe no cuts back here. And the market has once again kind of tested and gotten new information with that CPI, albeit you're talking very minimal as far as, softness in a report. So grain of salt there, but the market made a decision, at least in the last, few sessions, where we're going to continue to drive this higher. And we got back to the very mundane types of price action that I really hate, which is just slow, choppy grind and move upwards, where there's not really too good of two-way trades, and you just kind of have to catch maybe the one good move down. And then if you're long, you kind of either need to catch the big move or you're just holding the trade for hours as it just continues to move up. Friday was a pretty lackluster options expiration, if I do say so myself, as far as other ones we've experienced that have been rather volatile. We kind of just came up to the big strike at 6,000 SPX and couldn't really get too far above it, and then just kind of came back and we closed basically right on it. So no shocker there, but as far as, I even made an outlandish call. I think we were trading around here on Monday, around 58.50s, 58.60s. I'd have to check the screenshot. But I was joking with some friends in Discord, basically saying, wouldn't it be crazy if we went all the way to the 60-40s spot this week? And we did. Unfortunately, I captured very minimal of that outside of, some day trades here and there. But that was a hell of a, I guess call, but it made a lot of sense when you were kind of watching the options activity, even given the weakness in the early part of this week. And even after PPI, nothing had really shifted. Everybody was still super skewed to the call side, to the positive gamma side. And it just kind of gave us fuel where if CPI was soft, we were going to be off to the races. So I didn't take that bet. I took the bet on PPI being a little soft, and, the market rallied the way it did anyway. But going into this week, like I said, I gave you kind of the direction to the downside. I would not be shocked to see a rebid come in down here in kind of those mid 5900s, 5950s, 5940s. Like I said, pivot down to the 5935 area. But to the north side, if we come down, maybe peak below 6,000, retest last week's point of control and all of this volume that we've seen for the last few weeks, kind of the top half of the value range here, it's reasonable to think the logical destination for this week is going to be up here near 6100s, maybe even kind of the 6115, 6120s if we really got bullish this week. All-time highs and air horns, you can't rule it out. I think the implied move this week is only like 80, 90 points based on just positioning and the VIX and other stuff. So could be a lackluster week, but if we start getting bullish, guys, you start talking air horns, we start talking the FOMC lows, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's basically the 6115s type area. And it makes a lot of sense if we do start to build volume above, let's call it the last 3 weeks of volume structure here. So basically, if we can clear this 60-50 spot, it could be off to the races, at least up towards the 6100 spot. So it's hard when you have meme coins and other garbage continuing to be bid to ever want to step in front of it. So with that, my lean would be, you wait for that potential first rebid down here in kind of the under 6,000s, basically. If you could get it somewhere in the 670s, you see volume holding kind of near Friday's lows or Thursday evenings, whatever that rebid test was down here. But basically, if we start to hold that kind of 76, 75 area, and you see buyers continuing to defend and we start drifting up, that's a good place to get long, potentially for that longer rotation up towards 60-50s. That's where I would personally like to look to buy this. If I'm trading tomorrow, if we got the opportunity, I've got some things going on and I'm not really going to be trading that much tomorrow. If I can catch a good trade shortly after the half day open, I'll go for it, but I'm not planning on doing a whole lot tomorrow. So we'll see what shakes out on Tuesday when I'm on fast markets as well, and kind of where we're trading after the dust settles from inauguration and everything else. But the logic would be with this move, with the change in data from CPI, I say that tongue in cheek a little bit, nothing has really changed. And, albeit a hot report next month changes the narrative once again. But for the time being, this is now looking like it may want to break out of the downtrend we've been in since the FOMC, sell down. And if we can build above 60-50s, it's kind of off to the races, just like it was if we held the election low, which we did. So it's hard to get too bearish, like I said, unless we break down under my weekly pivot here at the 60-30s, which would basically be 5900s on SPX, another big option strike. As you know, typically after options expiration week, you see positioning change. You see things kind of roll to the next month. So the first couple of days can be a little weird, and then you kind of get a real move as that repositioning happens. So just be aware. Nothing may happen, a big move, anything to the downside. It may take a couple days. It may take into early parts of February. If you were to get any larger re-offer and sending us back down to retest kind of the lower edge of this value, it may not come this week. So it's hard for me to be too bearish going into this after last week's print and after the price action of Friday, even, albeit, options expiration, nothing had really changed in my mind. We'll jump to NQ. We are about 45 seconds from the open of the Globex session here, so bear with me. And as always, guys, as we're going through this, if you have questions, throw them into the chat. We'll grab them. I will get to them towards the latter half of tonight's show, and we can talk about them in more details. NQ had a very similar distribution to ES, came down, didn't quite make it towards the election lows, which I believe were, well down further at the 20,400. Another Q that the ES long would have been very safe to take around that 5,800 spot. So yeah, NQ was nowhere close to kind of getting backed into that old range that we saw in early November. And we are open. I'm actually very curious to see this. Not a gap up, but we are slowly moving up towards 21,600s and climbing kind of in still. NQ still is sitting in the 1 minute opening range from Friday, as it was majority of Friday's session, which is kind of crazy when you think of a 1 minute opening range. So yeah, on NQ, the exact same play, guys. Do we come back up here towards the previous week's, 2 weeks ago, not previous week, value area high, up here towards 800s. 800 has been a spot we've talked about for numerous weeks as being resistance. So the same logic is, if we get up there, is there a reoffer? Do we see sellers kind of stepping in to keep us in this, larger value area that we've had for the last, 5 weeks now? So that's something to keep in mind. You're going to see probably sellers looking to defend somewhere in this kind of 800s to 850s area. If we get above that, we go tag 22,000 again. And then from there, we're talking air horns and all the other fun stuff. If we really get bullish and silly this week, which, like I said, with Trump coin doing what it's doing, there's no reason not to think we might not get silly at some point in the coming weeks. So why not? Air horns are always welcome, except for, I guess, me. But if we go do it, so be it. It's just, it's hard to fade this move. So if the first place I really be looking to get short outside of an intraday scalp here or there is going to be back up here towards the 800s, 850s. Like I said, value area high going back to 2 weeks ago. To the downside, once again, if you were trying to get long, you want to try to rebid NQ somewhere between kind of the 420s to 370s. Kind of was that breakout spot of Friday as well. So do we come down? Do we retest last week's point of control? All of this volume down here, does it get defended by buyers? My assumption would be yes. And then there's a great place to get long potentially for the session. Below that, we definitely would come down towards last week's value area low, which is kind of the pre-CPI bunch that we had here around the 450s, the 940s, 950s. Gosh, that's crazy that we're all the way back up there now that I'm actually looking at these big round numbers. So yeah, that would be kind of the lower end target, I would say, of this week. Is going to be back towards 21,000s, down towards the 20,950s. I would expect that area to once again be defended if we even got down there. You could even make the claim somewhere between these 21,200s to 150s, probably another good spot to try along if you got real weakness, which I don't know if I'm expecting, to be all honest with you guys. And we are coming off the highs so far in NQ and ES. Not a wild Globex open thus far, as we've been coming and getting used to the last few weeks. So let's check out everyone's new favorite toy, crude oil. So crude now balancing potentially in a new range. Since the breakout, we kind of, if you remember last Sunday, we gapped up to like 76s. You came down at, I think I had talked about maybe trying to get long somewhere between like the 73s if we ever got that pullback. We didn't. But we are kind of just off to the races, and crude maybe putting in a new range up here. So, I mean, we had talked on this breakout. If you got long, you'd be looking to cover, kind of start peeling off in the 78, 78.50s, and then you'd be holding runners for a trip to 80s. That's probably still true. So looking at crude this week, if you were trying to get long, you're looking for longs probably around the 76.50s to 77s on the, I guess the higher end. I don't know if I'd want to long it there personally, but at least kind of the lower edge of last week's range. Value area low, like I said, right there on 76.50s to potentially try for that trip back up to 78. Maybe we go touch 80s. Trump is definitely trying to open up, obviously more domestic drilling and, energy and other things that we may start doing under that administration, where I believe the previous administration was not as friendly in new projects, new contracts being delivered for, kind of the natural resources that we have in this country. So that could, in theory, cause crude to go down, crude to go up. I mean, we have to kind of wait and see what how the market would react to potentially, in theory, more supply coming into the market in the future, if that were to actually happen. But definitely is going to, with the new administration, provide additional trading opportunities and provide a little more volatility to the product. So with this breakout, eventually I would expect a trip back down towards the kind of 72s to 74s area to kind of retest it, to give us an opportunity to get long, to kind of really confirm this breakout, if you will. So if you get long crude, you have to be aware that could happen, and that could be by a tweet. It could be something OPEC says. Like you don't know. That's one of the reasons I don't actively love trading crude at times. It's just that, anything can move the markets, but sometimes when I'm not even paying attention to some of these entities that can move the crude markets, it just shakes me out a little bit of wanting to trade it. But like I said, back down here towards the kind of the 76.50s to 75 at the absolute lowest, kind of retesting, like I said, the early parts of the gap up that we saw in crude last Sunday. But if not, you have to watch out for a larger down week, probably pushing us to go retest that breakout. To the upside, you'd be looking to kind of cover around the 80s to 81s, going back, what was it, July? Yeah, kind of the 80s level, going back to this and this crazy gap up and everything else that happened there with the rollover and stuff. So I don't exactly know where those highs would be, but 80 is a good safe target. So yeah, everyone watch Landman. Everyone get long crude at the right spot. That's my advice. That is not financial advice. I'm totally kidding. Look for the right place if you want to get long crude. On the short side, you could see, do we retest 78.50s? Maybe they reoffer there again, just like they did on Friday, to potentially look to actually short this. I don't know why you'd want to short this. There's nothing to indicate this breakout stopping. You should be looking for a rebid to get long with rather than trying to short this. But you guys are going to do what you do. So if you find a good opportunity to short crude during the intraday, go for it. And we are moving down a little bit. NQ dropping back to 21,550s from the open, which we got as high as 617, 618s, and have just kind of melted from there. So definitely could be a wild week. I'm hopeful and optimistic that Thursday and Friday are not going to be examples of the type of trading environment that we are going to get this week. With the holiday, there is still 4 good trading days this week, so hopefully there are some good opportunities. I don't know. I can't trade days like Thursday and Friday, man. It just is like, I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall. Like the ES candles are like 2 points, and for 5 minutes it's trading in like a 6 point range maybe. And it just drives me nuts. So hopefully a little better than that this week. Market closes tomorrow at noon for futures. If you're trading on Topstep, I believe in a live account, you need to be out by 11:15. I don't know if Andrew or somebody can confirm that. 11:15. I think all other funded and combines is 11:30. So just be aware. Futures close at noon, but you will have to be out of the positions a little early if you are trading a Topstep account. You should have gotten an email. I think there might have been 2 of them in the last couple days. So just be aware. You will have to liquidate some positions a little early if you're in a live account. All right, let's jump over to GC. GC continuing to be on a tear, but there's something to kind of keep in mind. You just continue to see in the early parts of the week, there is a like reoffer that has been happening the last couple sessions. Then we go make a new high. So if this continues, you could look for, potentially a retest. Who knows? This is a little different structure. Probably down towards the 2720s area. If you got to sell, maybe the 2730s. But just like we were talking about with crude, this looks like a breakout. We did come back up and retest the 2750s, which was this old kind of high that we put in a few weeks or about a month ago, back to, end of December or early December. And we might have failed there because you had a second attempt on Friday and it rejected right off of it. So something to keep in mind there. If you got a very large sell, like we could definitely come back towards the 2,700 kind of psychological big round number area. It is like a low volume node from last week where we just kind of blasted, came back, retested right above it, and then kind of were off to the races. So just like we were saying with crude, I'd still be looking for longs in GC, but I am a little more cautious longing it up here because now that is a rejection there. We held those lows that we kept talking about trying to find a swing long in. Came up, tested it once, rejected, came up, tested again, rejected. So if it tested it again, I would expect us to kind of break out and go towards 2,800 and just really be off to the races. But you have to take those reoffers seriously, at least for the time being. So I wouldn't want to long it right here. I'd be looking to get long a little bit lower. First place would be that 2730 spot, maybe even 2720s. And then if we were to not hold that, we're probably going all the way back to 2700 even. I don't think we're going to come all the way down and retest the breakout in this point of control from the last week. But, you know, all things are possible. So just like we said, I'm looking for longs in GC. Just got to find the right area. Oh, Andrew put it in the little chat with me. So I misspoke. Live account positions tomorrow, you need to be out of them by 11:30 a.m. Central Time, and combines and express or XFAs 11:45 a.m. Central. And then you can obviously get back in the Globex Open at 5 p.m. Central Monday evening. So that's the gist. Not 11:15 and 11:30. It is 11:30 for live, and combines and XFAs at 11:45. So there's your market closure for tomorrow. Obviously, markets will stay open for another 15 minutes for our XFA traders and combine traders, and 30 minutes for our live traders. So just be aware, you need to be out of your positions a little early tomorrow, but we've had many holidays and half days over the last few months, it seems. So nothing new for most of our traders. You guys should be aware. And, you know, I highly doubt there's a lot of great opportunities that late in a half day for most of our traders. You probably got the volatility of the day, and, you know, it's a good reason to get out before MOC, even if there is one tomorrow. I guess not. Anyway, let's talk about earnings. There is a decent earnings week this week. Obviously, nothing really tomorrow with the holiday and the half day, but going into this week, as we said last week, with the banks kind of leading us off, we are now back in the kind of next rotation of earnings season. So the big one to watch that's going to move the markets, it always does, is going to be Netflix. And you guys know me, I hate this company with a passion for some reason. It's a long story. No, I was not short Netflix at any point. But it's just, I just can't, sometimes I just can't explain valuations in some stocks and the movement that they have. Netflix is one of them. Chipotle is another after for the last like 5 years. Cause you guys have heard me say it. It's just not good anymore. And I don't understand who's supporting that balance sheet any longer. Netflix, it was always just like, how are they calculating subscribers is what I want to know. So anyway, Netflix is going to move the NASDAQ and move NQ after the close on Tuesday. So just be aware. I don't know if they report right after the bell or 15 minutes, if we're even going to be allowed to trade in Topstep accounts when they're still, when they are reporting. Sometimes I can't remember if they are immediately after the bell. But we do have United this week, Texas Instruments, and a number of other big names. But the only one that's really going to cause some seizures after hours is going to be Netflix. But a lot of big names here that are going to be important to still listen to, understand what their CEOs are saying. American could give us a good pulse on how some of the holiday travel was for them as well. But yeah, that would be the big one, and a few of the other smaller banks, others kind of rounding us out here towards the latter half of the week. Some of the more regional banks, but that's pretty much it. Max 7's not for a few more weeks, so we will get to talk about that. And I think it's honestly, is it next week? Maybe it's in like 3 weeks. I can't remember if it was towards the end of February or if it was January. I don't know. My weeks blur together, guys. That's the fun of a newborn. So yeah, that's the earnings season. Netflix is the gotcha after hours. Just be aware, as always. On the economic calendar front, lighter week, obviously with the holiday, nothing really going to happen or move the markets as far as data releases until jobless claims on Thursday. And then existing home sales and PMI on Friday. Michigan consumer sentiment, always after the bell at 9 a.m. Central Time, always will stop you out of a position. I don't know why. It always does. It always will. It just is my least favorite thing about like every other Friday or every 3 weeks, however this data comes out. Outside of some bond auctions, no Fed speakers really this week. Yeah, very, very light week as far as data releases and news. We got the big one last week with CPI and PPI. So we get a little break, a little vacation from the pre-market algos moving the markets and then us not really trading more than like 100 points, it feels like after. So yeah, that's the gist. Nothing too crazy going on this week. So definitely some good trading opportunities without having to kind of deal with or address the post-news fallout that we usually have once the market's actually open. You're not going to see suddenly a bunch of repositioning and options closing the second the market opens based on how this data was. So we'll have to see how how the opens are this week, how much they actually move a little bit. All right. And then on the options front. So we had talked last week, if you guys can go back and watch it, we had talked about the big elephant in the room that the 6,000 SPX gamma was the largest going into last week, despite us trading about 200 points lower when we were doing this show. And we moved all the way to it. In fact, we closed right below it. So when I tell you guys these things and show you some of this data, I take it seriously. People don't want to ever admit that options really are the market these days, but it really seems like it. When you see moves like last week, sometimes it's just like it's not like you're hurting yourself, but it's like you're missing a piece of the puzzle and trying to do it every day. So like I said, you don't necessarily need to trade off of some of this stuff, or you just need to have it in the back of your mind. I feel like at times of just where we may go, how we can move, and where some of the larger pools of liquidity are sitting. They don't necessarily always act as magnets. They don't necessarily are going to give you the perfect picture, and they don't always hold, but it's still like information that I think is helpful. It can obviously be a distraction on the wrong time frame, but this told the tale last Sunday as far as direction. Once that election low held of where we were going, it was right there. I didn't take large trades to the long side, but damn, there could have been a hell of a swing long. Just using some of this information. So going into this week, everybody's all bulled up again, and we have positive gamma exposure all the way up to 6,100 and even 6,200. So when we were talking about the ES prep on, be prepared if things get silly, that's where we're going. And it's hard to not think that even looking at the options activity. Doesn't mean we're not going to rebid or, have a rebid a little lower before we do that. It could be a very balanced, slow, terrible week to trade. We'll see. But for the time being, the strikes are moving higher and it's pretty balanced. So what this tells me is we're most likely going to chop, balance, and slightly move higher if we can get past this 6,000 gamma. The other thing to keep in mind is if we do start to drift up towards some of these higher gamma strikes, there's no reason if this does not shift from the put side here, like if there's still this much exposure there towards the middle of the week and we're trading up at 6,100, 6,115s like we were talking about, there's no reason to think we wouldn't just eventually drift back down towards the big option strike once again. So that is how to think about it. But this tells a story of some, at least the markets are forward looking until they're not. And they always like to think that way. So this was a little bit of repositioning, most likely after CPI, PPI, and options expiration going into, Friday. There is interest in some higher strikes. So nobody's prepared for downs as for downside as they were last week. So naturally, that's when you can have larger moves to the downside. But as always, when we start to see this level of bullishness once again, until the narrative changes or until something happens or there's a catalyst, get along with it, guys. All right. Let's jump back to the equities. As I said, if you have questions, if there's stuff you guys want me to talk about and go over, throw it in the chat. We will have plenty of time here in a few minutes to start jumping into some questions. So start getting them in. We'll go over them, and we can kind of go from there. Let's jump back to ES. Trading not near the lows of the session, kind of off that pump to 60/40s, kind of fell off, trading at 60/25s. So decently wide range thus far for a Sunday open. Yeah, hard to put too much weight in it just yet. Usually we've seen some volatile early parts of the Asia session, I guess the pre-Asia session here, but nothing that's making me want to think about jumping into a trade as of yet. All right, we'll get to some questions. I'm seeing some in the chat start to pile in. No, I've never traded platinum. I've always wanted to. I've only traded gold. I've always wanted to try silver, platinum, some of the others, but you know, I don't know. I'm afraid of change, apparently. No, it really comes down to, guys, like I'm just watching equities 9 times out of 10. And if there's a decent opportunity that shows itself in metals or crude, I mean, I'll take it, but I don't have those charts like always up, like, and I'm not reading price action and a DOM and, you know, delta and those things the way I'm reading it on ES and NQ. Like I'm just not paying that much attention to it on the others. Obviously, if I did, I'm sure I'd find more opportunities intraday, but it's just not, it doesn't have my eyeballs the same way. I look at those a lot more from like a swing time frame for, you know, the kind of breakout trades that we just saw the last 2 weeks. Like that's more where my eyeballs are for some of the other instruments. Intraday, price action, I mean, which is a stupid way to think about it, because sometimes you get just such clean trades in the others and you don't get chopped up by NQ in something like crude at times. Most of the time it doesn't do that. So maybe I should, I don't know. It just comes down to like, I also don't want to be sitting here staring at charts all day, every day. So if I get my 1 or 2 opportunities and equities, and I can call it, that's the way I like to trade. So, I just saw another question in the chat. I'm just going to grab. Where? Oh. So I did see this one because it's not available yet. How could I set up delta data or an indicator on Topstep X's charts, or a best place to have it? So currently, guys, it's not like what I use, like my delta footprint, delta by price. Some of that is just, it's just not available in Topstep X yet. Hoag and I talk about it so much that it's going to get done. I just have absolutely no timeline for when, but with how much interest and how much we talk about it, it's going to get built for it. I believe Hoag had made a comment that it's in the works or something like that. Don't quote me, because I was listening to TopstepTV. I was not on it, I believe, when he said it, but so many of us use it, and we're using it on other platforms, and it's like an extra screen and something else that I have to look at when I'm trading my live accounts. So it'd be awesome if it can have be available as an indicator inside of Topstep X. I would imagine it will in the future, you know, having that perspective of what delta is from certain time frames or certain candles or by price or however they're going to build it. So I know it'll come in the future because so many people have asked for it, but it's not there yet. So if you wanted to use it, many of the other charting platforms, you know, MotiveWave, Sierra, Ninja, they all have variations of it. So if you use other platforms as well, the way I do at times, I mean, there's other ways to see that data. You just need to see what else. If you're only trading on Topstep or Topstep X, you have to use something else for the time being, I guess is what I'm saying. Until it's available, you're going to have to check out one of the other charting platforms and play around to kind of get that level of data, and you need level 2 data as well. All right, let's jump over. Sorry, I lost the top of the other questions. Hang on. Hey, Nick, can you tell me how to set my volume profiles like you have it? Sure. We do this every week, so I should probably just start with this. I always feel like this is one of the first questions that comes in. So you need to grab either the visible range volume profile, like I have it here on the right, or fixed range. If you use fixed range, you have to drag the candlestick patterns or drag the candlesticks that you want it to spit out. So if you want weekly, like I have, just every Sunday before, the open, just basically go to indicators, go to fixed range, and then you just select how many, which days time frame that you want to create a volume profile for, and it'll spit it out. So, and it doesn't delete them unless you delete them. So I just keep my weekly ones like this. So when I'm on a 1 hour, 4 hour, I can see them. When I'm on a 5 minute, they kind of go away because I trade off a 5 minute in TopstepX. But then my settings, I switch it to ticks. For ES, I keep my ticks at 4. So that is 1 point. And then my style, I keep the point of control active. And I keep my value area at 70%. I do total volume, not delta, because it changes it. So I like total, but it's really up to you guys how you want to kind of play around with it. There's a million ways to read and trade off volume profile, but those are my settings. I keep them super basic because it's just about understanding, where volume by price was traded, where the value area highs, value area lows are. And another thing, if you're not a big volume profile person or you just think this is messy and too much on your charts, just add the previous weeks, the value area high, value area low from the Topstep daily levels too is another way to spit out some of the information. Obviously, this is a week time frame, so you still would need to kind of manually plot them there. But that's the gist. Those are my settings. That's how I use it. Oh, that answers the next question. What is the name of the indicator you're using for volume? So I don't really care about the day's volume or how much is traded in certain parts of it. I care more about how much volume was traded by price. So I use volume profile. Like I said, those are the two. Visible range, volume profile, and fixed range are the two that I use on TopstepX. I'm trying to learn about options in ETF and zero DTEs. I'm a bad influence, guys. But there are so many different things on the web. I don't know which I should trust. Any recommendations? Nothing I would truly recommend. It just depends on kind of what you want to learn. Are you trying to learn how to trade them? If you're trying to learn how to really trade options and you don't understand the Greeks, that's where the first place I would start is just understanding how options are priced, how they move, how they decay before you get anywhere near the zero DT casino. That is kind of the first recommendation I would have is just, there's good information on YouTube. There's free stuff out there. There's a ton of good education just to get your feet wet a little bit. And then I tell you to play around with it in Thinkorswim's paper trading account, because you can do the options on there. Get a feel for just how things move. Obviously you're doing it on delays and stuff like that, but you can get an idea of how to cover positions, how to read the options chain, things like that I do. Obviously, it's not my main. I don't trade options day in and day out. If I see an opportunity or I see something I can express, I'm usually, what's funny, guys, I read the options chain, but most of it is me expressing it. And this is a weird way when I'm talking about the triple Qs or SPY or other things that I do, I'm expressing it with a futures trade mentality for looking for reversals or looking for breakouts or things like that. That is a weird way of kind of how I've been trading it. I don't think that's necessarily the best idea to do it, but because I watch price action in futures so much, it's just a way I've kind of been playing around with it. And then doing the same type of charting that I do is, that I do on ES and NQ, you can do it on the ETFs. So like I said, learn the Greeks, learn how to decay, paper trade them before you really get crazy trading options. Like I said, it's a vehicle I use. I don't trade it every day. I don't, I use a very similar size stop loss as far as risk that I do with a futures trade as well. So this is not Nick YOLOing and trading options every day. That is not how I do it. I am very scalpy the same way I am when I trade NQ or when I do with options. Hey, Nick, quick question for you. Why did you place your weekly pivot around 59.35 on ES? What's the logic behind it? Sure. So basically, this is going to be 5,900 on SPX, roughly, depending on the spread. So I use a 5 points. So grain of salt there, could go down to like 59.30s as the week progresses. But it basically would say, I want to see us clear, not last week's, but the last 2 weeks of point of controls and value area lows. If you guys remember, my pivot was right around a little lower than this. It's the same thing. I moved it up, and it basically is like the bottom of this volume structure here. So for me to want to get to bearish, I would want to see us clear those volume shelves, clean up the not even single prints, but clean up this volume from CPI, like come down and kind of retest some of the breakout of CPI. And I'm just like kind of visually looking and seeing where's all that volume. And it's about halfway through that candle. It also coincides with, like I said, that big round option strike that we're going to see 5,900s, big psychological number as well. So when you're thinking about pivots, this doesn't mean long above, short below. This means, what does price action do if price approaches, or if we get down there? And right now, my bias is thinking this area, the 59.30s type spot, all the way down to 59.20s. This could definitely pierce it, which is why it's not a short signal if we break below it. I would expect kind of all of this volume, these value area lows, to be defended. So that's kind of the logic. For me to get to, really looking for like larger swing shorts, I would want to see us break down at this level. I expect if we got some weakness in the early parts of this week, I would expect buyers to defend in that area. So that's what I'm saying. I am looking for longs really outside of scalps unless we start kind of cascading below this. So that's the logic. That's how I use pivots. It is not a long above, short below. It really is just who is in control, in my opinion, if price is above it and price is below it. Doesn't mean there's not going to be good longs if we're below 59.30s. Doesn't mean there's not good short opportunities if we're above it. It's just a way to think of, I think, who has the ball, who's on offense. It's kind of how I use it. I answered that one. Have I ever traded platinum? No. I would like to. Do you only look at weekly volume profiles when you do your analysis, or do you look at daily also? I look at daily, but it spits out in a different chart. It's just for my daily, I use it the exact same way. But most of the time for daily, I just want it to fire the value area highs and value area low. Otherwise, it's just like there's too much noise then in my chart. I think it's much, at least from my experience, like, yes, the previous day levels make a lot of sense. But I always feel like weekly areas, when for you looking at more volume and things, it tends to behave. I think previous day high, previous day low, and value area high, value area low of the previous day is really all I need and all I really care to look at from the previous session. So, but I use them all. I'll use a daily profile the same way. But I most likely will not chart the histogram. I will just chart the key levels. Do you use Bookmap? I do. I do have it in one of my screens some days. But do I actively use it and trade off of it? No, because a lot of the time it's just a different way to look at the same type of price action and, delta and the order book depth. It's just a different way. So sometimes I'm interested in kind of eyeballing it and having an idea of what it looks like. But I used it more when I first started trading, and now I feel like I don't necessarily need it because I use different variations of the same information. So it's a helpful tool. But for me, it's not 100% necessary. So I use it because it's available, and in theory, I don't pay for it. So I have access to see it on somebody else's. So I look at it randomly. Israeli hostage release. Trump has a new job. Would you think this all leads to an optimistic view of next week? What do you think? Yeah, I weirdly think I'm leaning bullish for this week. I don't have a bias, guys. I really try not to go into the week with too much of a bias because so much can change. Look at how bearish everything was in the early parts of last week, and then it just got more and more bullish for the week. And here we are, meme coins worth as much as Fortune 500 companies. So, yes, I would lean more optimistic with the new administration. Obviously, Trump just being a very market-friendly president and administration and business friendly and things like that. It's hard not to be at least very bullish out of the gate. Obviously, things can change on a dime. It takes one catalyst, and everything we're still seeing, I think, with the treasury and with the the debt and everything else. I mean, eventually I think these are questions we need to ask, like what's going on and how that's going to affect the markets. But for the time being, that doesn't care. The market's, on a path to air horns and memes and, everything's bullish, and the NFT faces on Twitter are coming out of the woodwork. So when that happens, I'm not saying it's a top, but we may be near one in the coming months. Who knows? Like I said, guys, I'm very much trying to get out of the macro of where we're trading on a, longer time frame. As far as like, are we at all-time highs? I'm very much trying to treat it like session by session, week by week, looking for, where we may reoffer, where we may rebid, and trying just to get out of the noise, everything else. Obviously, I've caught some good swing shorts the last few weeks, but I also cover very quickly. So it's like, I'm not even when I'm bearish, I'm not that bearish. Because the market does this, and it punishes late shorts day in and day out. And, if this year turns out to be like 2022, then there's gonna be plenty of opportunities to short this thing to zero. But until it actually is moving down, look for a dip to buy and get along with, some violent days to the downside if you get them, but do expect a V-shaped recovery in there. So yes, am I optimistic in the short term, as in going into this week? Yes, I expect the CPI candle area like this is probably going to be defended. I would not be shocked to see if we got anything down that it maybe stalls down here towards the low 59s. I don't think we're going to get much more bearish than that unless, like I said, unless there's a catalyst, unless the news changes, the data changes, something in the equation changed, and it did on Wednesday. We're back to inflation being defeated. So everything is all, kittens and rainbows for at least the next couple sessions. That's the way to look at it. All right, guys. Well, that is all the questions. Unless there was any other in the chat that I may have missed. TikTok is back. Was it even gone? How long was it? I saw like some people showing it was disabled, but that could have been more than a few hours. I don't know what every broccoli-headed Gen Zer did for 7 minutes without TikTok, but it sounds like everything is fine again. Depends on the Trump tweets. Yeah, it does. Well, we'll recap the prep real quick. If there are no more questions, TikTok was gone for like 14 hours. I'm sure every Gen Zer was in shambles. And I did hear they were making 911 calls. I don't know if that was a joke or if that was just something I saw on Twitter that I shouldn't even believe. But if that's actually true, guys, we need a new plague. We really need a new plague. All right. So recapping the ES prep here, we are trading currently below the 6,000 strike on SPX. We came up on Friday. We couldn't quite get above the old high from 2 weeks ago. You see sellers slowly reoffering in that area. So if we got weakness, first place to look for buys is going to be below 6,000s in this 59.90s type area to kind of retest the last week's point of control. If you got weakness below there, I'd expect us to go return to my weekly pivot down here towards 59.30s. Low of the week kind of area that I'd be really looking for us to potentially put in that true bottom is going to be back down towards kind of 59.10s, 59.15s. I would expect something in that 59.30s to 59.15s area to be bought for a trip back up. To the upside, we're talking 6100s to 6115s, if I'm being honest. If we were to get a passive rebid and start moving upwards, I'd be looking for us to go return at least to the 6100s. Like I said, maybe retest the FOMC lows before the market makes a decision. But for the time being, the thing to keep in mind is looking at the last month of price action. We are in a range and we are at the top of that value area currently. So a reoffer in this area, the 60-50, should not shock anybody. And the first place we'd be going is the point of control of that value area, which is that 59.90s area. So that's the gist. That is the plan. That is the prep. I hope this has been helpful. I hope everybody got something out of this. Thank you guys for all tuning in. We are moving a little bit lower off that initial high from the open. So be careful if you are trading this. You know, it probably is going to be a stupid early part to this week. No matter what happens, maybe it'll be volatile, give us something to trade. So be safe out there. Use stops. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your Sunday evening. I hope everyone has had a good time hanging out here. Thank you guys as always for tuning in. Coach Dakota will be back on for slow markets here in about 90 minutes. So do give him your presence, your attention. Obviously, he's got different ideas, a different perspective than I do. So you get to see two of Topstep's traders kind of giving you their deep dive going into the week. So everybody have a good Sunday evening. And I will see you guys all on Fast Markets on Tuesday morning with the TopstepTV team. So I'll see you guys then. Have a good night, and we'll talk soon.